I remember those childhood weekends at my aunt and uncle's farm days, filled with endless fields, secret hideaways, and the sweet thrill of adventure. Every visit brought a sense of freedom, a world where time slowed down and our imaginations transformed every shadow into a mystery waiting to be solved. Our little crew of 3, my 2 cousins and me, was always on the hunt for excitement. Beyond the familiar barns and sunlit pastures, there was one place that beckoned us like a forbidden secret. An old, abandoned estate a short walk away. Tucked behind a rusted iron fence and overgrown with wild vines, the decaying structure was the centerpiece of local legends. Whispers told of sorrowful histories and unexplained tragedies, and though we knew the stories might have been exaggerated, the eerie allure was impossible to ignore. One late summer afternoon, the heat still clinging to the air, we decided to elevate our game of hide and seek. It wasn't long before I volunteered to hide in the abandoned barn, a structure that had once been full of life, but now stood as a silent relic of a bygone era. Its weathered exterior and creaking floorboards spoke of long-lost days and secrets best left undisturbed. Inside, the barn was a labyrinth of shadow and dust. Shafts of fading light pierced through broken windows, illuminating patches of old furniture and relics scattered about. I found myself drawn to a narrow staircase leading up to a small loft area that had once served as a storage space. As I ascended the rickety steps, the air grew cooler and the silence more oppressive. At the top, I discovered a cramped room tucked away in a forgotten corner of the barn. It was small, almost as if it were meant for storage rather than shelter, but to my young mind it was the perfect hideaway. A heavy folding door guarded the entrance to a tiny closet filled with moth-eaten drapes and faded garments that once belonged to someone from another time. The fabric, dark and draped with history, provided a veil of anonymity in the dim light. I squeezed inside and managed to close the door behind me, leaving only a thin sliver of sunlight as my guide. Time seemed to slow to a crawl as I crouched in that tight space. The initial thrill of hiding soon gave way to a creeping loneliness. Minutes, or was it hours, passed in silence. I began to wonder if my cousins had forgotten the game, or if they had simply moved on. Then, as the last vestiges of daylight vanished, an unsettling realization gripped me. I had been left alone in the dark. A sudden sharp cramp in my calf jolted me from my reverie, pinning me further into the cold, dusty floor. I tried to summon the courage to leave, but just then a loud bang echoed from below. My heart leapt into my throat. I strained to listen, and soon I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, and not quite childlike, ascending the creaking staircase. Each heavy step was punctuated by a muted thud, as if something massive was dragging along the wooden boards. Frozen in fear, I pressed my back against the closet door. The footsteps paused outside, and for a moment, every sound in the barn seemed to disappear except for my own ragged breathing. Then the dragging resumed, accompanied by a scraping noise that filled the silence with an eerie promise of danger. I could smell it too, a faint, sickening odor, reminiscent of decay mixed with damp earth. The smell was so potent that it made my stomach churn. As the sounds grew closer, I felt a cold breath graze the back of my neck, a whisper of something not entirely human. It was as though the very air around me had shifted, carrying with it a presence that I could neither see nor shake off. Panic surged through my veins. I waited, every second stretching into an eternity, hoping desperately that the intruder would pass by without noticing me. But then, almost as if drawn by some unseen force, the footsteps stopped right outside the closet door. I held my breath, heart pounding in a rhythm too loud for comfort. In that suffocating silence, 3 things happened at once. The putrid smell grew stronger. I heard a deep, ragged exhalation right behind me, and an inexplicable force urged me to flee. There was no time to think, only to act. With a burst of adrenaline, I flung the closet door open and bolted out into the open space of the barn. The darkness was absolute now, illuminated only by slivers of moonlight that snacked through shattered windows. I stumbled over scattered debris, my senses overwhelmed by the pounding of my heart and the echo of those relentless heavy footsteps following in the distance. Every step felt like an eternity as I navigated through the maze of broken planks and discarded relics, my mind a whirlwind of terror and disbelief. I didn't stop until I burst through the barn's creaking door and into the cool embrace of the night. The familiar outlines of the farm provided little comfort as I ran, guided only by the hope of reaching safety. When I finally reached my aunt and uncle's house, a police car was already parked in the driveway, its lights a silent testament to the night's mysterious events. My parents, faces etched with worry and relief, asked in trembling tones where I had been, their voices mingling with the sound of distant sirens. In the days that followed, the entire incident was met with a mixture of skepticism and fear. The police confirmed that they had scoured every inch of the abandoned estate, but found nothing, no trace of an intruder, no evidence of forced entry, nothing to explain the heavy, dragging footsteps and the chilling presence I had encountered. Yet, despite the logical explanations offered by authorities, I could not shake the memory of that night. It wasn't until many years later, during a family gathering, that one of my cousins confided in me a final, haunting detail. He recalled that while we had all been frantically searching for me that day, he and his brothers had seen something else, a small figure standing in one of the dusty windows of the barn's loft. The figure, resembling a young boy with a faint, knowing smile, waved silently at them before disappearing into the shadows. They swore it wasn't me, yet it haunted their memories as much as it haunted mine. To this day, I still question what really happened that night at Blackwood Barn. Was it merely the product of a child's overactive imagination? Or had I truly brushed against something beyond our world, a lingering spirit from a past life, trapped in the echoes of a place long forgotten? The unanswered questions continue to follow me, a constant reminder that some mysteries refuse to fade away, no matter how much time has passed. Every time I close my eyes, I can still hear those slow, deliberate footsteps, feel that icy breath at the nape of my neck, and catch a fleeting glimpse of that mysterious figure in the window. And while I have grown older, and the farm has long since faded into memory, the shadows of Blackwood Barn remain, forever etched in the corners of my mind. A few months ago, on a chilly autumn Friday, I gathered with my closest friends for our weekly game, a twist-on manhunt we called Shadow Pursuit. We were a tight-knit group from the neighborhood. I'm 16, with Alan at 17, Dan in my grade, and my best friend, Johnny and Daniela, both 14, Nick at 13, and little Tom, who was only 12. Despite our age differences, every Friday night was our chance to push boundaries and explore the unknown. That particular evening, the energy was different. Our chosen arena was the long-abandoned Harwood Mansion, a relic from a time when Mr. Harwood still called it home. Since his passing years ago, the mansion had become the perfect stage for our game, a place where shadows danced and every creak of the floorboards told a story. Dan and I volunteered to hide first. We slipped away from the other kids and made our way to the back of the mansion, where tall, overgrown bushes and a neglected garden provided a natural cover. Dan, ever the daredevil, suggested we take our game one step further. Instead of merely hiding outside, he proposed we enter the mansion through a partially broken window. I hesitated at first, but the lure of mystery was too strong to resist. Inside, the mansion was cloaked in darkness, illuminated only by faint moonlight sneaking through dusty windows. The air was thick with the silence of years gone by. Outside, our friends continued their frantic search for hidden players, their distant voices punctuating the night. I took refuge in the dense foliage while keeping one cautious eye on the mansion. After several tense minutes, I heard footsteps approaching from the other side of the yard. Two kids from the opposing team were on the move, their chatter and laughter drawing ever nearer. Once they passed by, I dared to peek through the broken window. There, in a shadowy corner of an upstairs room, I caught sight of Dan's head emerging from behind a tattered curtain. I waved excitedly, signaling that it was time to move. Instead of joining me immediately, Dan's voice whispered, "Keep quiet," in an odd tone, urgent, yet laced with uncertainty. Before I could question him, a deep creak resounded from somewhere above. The sound, echoing through the empty halls, sent a shiver down my spine. Dan's eyes widened as if he'd seen something that defied explanation, and for a moment, time seemed to freeze. Without a word, we both scrambled back through the window and ran towards the safety of Nick's house, our hearts pounding in unison. The next day, Dan's father, who had once known Mr. Harwood personally, decided to investigate the mansion with us. Together, the four of us retraced our steps, ascending the creaking stairs that seemed to groan under our weight. In a dimly lit bathroom, a single flickering light revealed nothing more than an old, worn-out blanket in a corner and a scattering of faded photographs. There was no sign of anyone, yet the feeling of being watched lingered. Even now, the events of that night remained shrouded in mystery. Who, if anyone, was there with us? And why did Dan appear so unsettled by something we couldn't see? The mansion had whispered secrets in the dark secrets that left us with more questions than answers. That night, Shadow Pursuit transformed from a simple game into a legend among us, a reminder that some mysteries are best left unexplored. Sometimes, when the wind rustles through the trees on a quiet night, I still wonder if the past reaches out from those darkened halls, urging us to remember that not everything in the shadows is meant to be understood. They're watching you. Subscribe to Horror Haven, like and share before it's too late.